Hey guys, how's it going? Happy Monday, Mario here out of Dallas. Welcome to our Finline Financial Sales meeting. As you know, we like to do a little bit of coaching and training, and then we'll go over our numbers, production, pipeline, and whatnot. The numbers we do not record because this goes back up, but I always want to make sure that any type of coaching or training that we have, we do put on the YouTube channel. If you're not on the YouTube channel, make sure that you are subscribing. If somebody can go ahead, and put the actual YouTube channel in our signal, that'd be great. Also, as an update, we've decided that we are going to rebrand the agency. It's going to be the Finline Agency, and that's going to be internal as far as marketing and branding and recruiting purposes for the agents. And then Finline Financial, we're dropping the, and Finline Financial is going to be external, and that's what you would show or send to any of the potential clients or whatnot. So we want to separate those two, and so that's what we decided to do. The branding is the same. The reason why I wanted to make sure that we put the Finline Agency in front of it is because if somebody were to type in, Fin, right, the last thing you want is for Finline Financial and Finline Agency to pop up right next to each other. So in order to get something internal, right, that is agent facing, they'd have to type in the Finline Agency and then just Finline Financial. So anyhow, very important as we continue to grow, but just wanted you guys to know that we've got a new logo coming for the Finline Agency. And yeah. So today, guys, before we get into the numbers, I just want to talk to you about a couple of different types of questions to ask. They're more categorical, but very important that we are asking the appropriate questions to help to close our clients. Now, why is it so important to ask the appropriate questions? Well, asking the appropriate questions, guys, is how you are going to close business, but in my opinion, more importantly, keep business. Okay, it helps to eliminate chargebacks, right? And why this is also so important is because I believe simple human communication is a lost art form, right? Simple human communication is a lost art form, especially with the younger generation. They just want to text everything, right? That's all they want to do, right? What do you mean call? How many of you guys, and again, this is for all of us, how many of you guys have gotten a phone call and we're so used to texting that when you get a phone call, you look at your phone and you're like, why is so-and-so calling me, right? Instead of just picking up the phone, how many of you remember when we were little, there was no such thing as caller ID, and the phone rang, you just picked it up. Now it's almost like, and then you go, well, if it's important, they'll leave a message. We're even almost afraid to pick up the phone from people that we're not expecting calls from, right? And so we have to be active about keeping our linguistic skills sharp, right? Making sure that we're asking the appropriate questions, that we're being very, very sharp listeners as well. Okay, so there's 4 different categories of questions that you need to hit in every single, whether it's a discovery call, right? By the way, I think I'm going to change that terminology because it's a little bit more widely known and accepted as opposed to the financial needs assessment call. The paper is called a financial needs assessment form, but typically it's referred to industry wide as a discovery call, right? So your first call. So whether it's a discovery call, financial needs assessment, if it's your first presentation with them, right, where you're going through the PowerPoints, if it's your second, right, presentation over Zoom, which we call an application review, right, it doesn't matter. These are the type of questions that you really need to get good at asking, and not just ask the initial question, but probe 2 and 3 levels deep, okay? So first type of question that you want to be asking are opening questions, right? So the first thing I always say, so I literally say it, and it's in my script because I'm just a creature of habit, and if it's there, I'll say it. Reminds me of the old classic movie, right? Anchorman. You guys know the old classic, one of the most uh, advanced cinematography. I'm just kidding. It's Anchorman, right? But remember in Anchorman, the thing about Ron Burgundy was they said if you put it on the teleprompter, he will say it. Right? Do you guys remember that part? And so that's how they got him fired because they said, "Go f yourself, San Diego," because they put it on the teleprompter. That's kind of how I am. If you put it on the script, I'm gonna say it, right? Because I know that people make millions of dollars reading scripts. So there's actually a point in my script that I use personally. Okay, it's the same one that I give to you guys, but maybe I've tailored it a bit. Where I say, now, Nicole, I'm going to toss the ball over to you for a second. Okay, and tell me what's got you looking into different options to begin with, right? It's that idea of what triggered you. And so the first question is, what made you start thinking about retirement options? What made you start thinking about taxes? What made you start thinking about tax-free options, right? The idea is you have to open them up, right? So the first type of question is an opening question. Hey, so talk to me. Toss the ball over to you for a second. I just want to hear what they have to say. And guys, by the way, I'm working from a place where we're purchasing leads, right? Because so these conversations are happening with somebody who went online, requested information, you called them back, and they said hello, right? Now, these questions, these four categories, still need to be there when you're working a referral, okay? But we're going to work today from a place of how do we approach people who are purchasing leads? So, number one is an opening question. What made you start thinking about retirement? That is a very deliberate and intentional question. And right after you ask it, shut up. Stop talking. Because what happens is when you stop talking, it creates this awkwardness. And that's what you want sometimes, right? You want to put the ball in their court and just be quiet until they pick it up and start talking, right? So, what made you start thinking about retirement? What made you start thinking about taxes? What made you start thinking about tax-free options? Okay. And so they'll start sharing, right? A lot of times dealing with annuities like I do, I'll get, well, I'm coming to retirement age. I'm 60 years old now. I'll probably work another 2 years, maybe 3 years, 5 years. But I know that I'm over the 59 and a half hump for 401k. So that opens up some options. I just don't really know where to go. And so I saw your ad, and this is what I get a lot. Okay. So I take that, I write it down. I always thank them. Okay. Hey, thank you so much for sharing that. Right. And then the other thing that I do a lot is I tell them, I make them feel normal. I make them feel like this is part of the normal process. That sounds like most of my clients, right? You sound like most of my clients who are just coming because they want to make sure that they're doing the right thing. They want to know that they're making the right decision. Okay. And so by making somebody feel normal, right, or like make them feel like they're just like everybody else, okay, then you start to establish the fact that they're in the right place. Okay. You want them to feel like, oh, okay, good. I am barking up the right tree then. Yes, you are. I can help you. You're like most of my clients. Okay. So the second question is what we call a clarifying question. Okay. And by clarifying, one of the first things that you do is start establishing trust. Okay. It's like this. Like, let's say, Lisa and I are over at the local barbecue, right? And we're just having a good time and we're talking. And you know, Lisa is a personal friend of my wife and I. So I can say this. Lisa is like myself. She's a talker. Okay. And so imagine her and I are standing there and we're just talking and she's sharing her whole story with me. Right. And then I turn around and I clarify. Oh, so what you're saying is yada, yada, blah, blah, blah. Oh, okay, cool. Right. That's starting to establish the fact, establishing trust that, hey, this guy's actually listening to me, right? He's following along. He cares, right? Whereas what if she told her whole story to me and I was like, right on, cool. She'd be like, yeah, thanks. Like I'm gonna walk away and talk to somebody else now, right? So when you ask those clarifying questions to what they say, right? You're showing them that you're listening intently and that you're trying to establish trust with them, right? So the reason you ask these clarifying questions as well, like simple. So why now, right? You're 59 and a half, right? But now you're 60. How come you didn't ask 6 months ago, right? Or you're 62, but 59 and a half was a couple years ago. Why now? Did something happen that triggered you to want to learn more? See, what you have to get to, guys, is that there is some type of emotional tie or a need tied to this request for information. You have to find that, okay? Because how many of you guys know that people don't buy with their brain, they buy with their heart, right? They buy with emotion. People buy what they want, okay? So if they're going to buy, they're going to buy because they want it. Well, how did they get to that place? How did this emotional thing cause them to do such a logical thing like request information, right? Request some more. So, hey, so what has anything happened? Or so what's got you thinking about it now, right? That's a really important question. Clarify what they say and then ask why now. Has something happened, right? And you're just going to have to dig. Tell me more about that. Oh, okay, really? How come? Okay, great. Why is that? And these second and third level digging, why is that? Tell me more. How does that make you feel? Guys, I'm going to tell you, I've been in sales a long time. They're the most difficult type of questions to ask, right? Especially if you're new. Because when you're new, you're going to want to be like, oh, you're going to, obviously, they're not going to see your face because you're on the phone. So you're like, so what made you request now? And they're going to say, oh, yeah, I'm just a little worried about the market, what could be potentially happening with the market. Perfect. Okay. And you just keep moving. Because in your mind, you're like, okay, ask the right question. He gave me a good answer. Go. Right. So you want to continue to ask those second and those third level questions. Okay. So with the market, yeah, I mean, a lot of people are really worried. Is there anything in particular about the election that's worrying you? Right. Well, I don't know. I'm just not sure. I'm just not sure if Kamala wins, this might happen. If Trump wins, this might happen, and I'm not sure, right? Here's a good way to stay like impartial, right? To stay in the middle. The verbiage that I use, I say it's actually really wise for you to be, looking at your options right now. And it's not right based or left based, it's just common sense based. Listen, people are in search of power right now. And we know that those who have money usually have the power. So all that means for the everyday average person is while these two massive parties and entities and people are fighting and jostling for power, it's making the waves of water, the money water, go like this, right? So it's really nerve-wracking for the average person. So let's put you in a position, whether it be with an IBC product, we don't have to say that right now, but whether it be with an IBC product or with a fixed index annuity, where you become immune to the choppy waters that are happening in the markets because of the jostling for power, right? And so typically people really like that because they're like, yes. And I'm not going to offend them either way for, whoever they might be voting for, whatever way they might be leaning, right? So really important that you start asking those clarifying questions. But it goes down to the next one, which is the third category of question, is probing questions. Okay. And I always like to say, find the need and then poke it, right? Poke it, right? I don't know if you guys remember when you were kids, if you ever had, I did. I actually had two. I had two cousins that were older than me, and I think they just found it their life's purpose to just piss with me constantly. So if I had a bruise, I had a cousin that if I had a bruise, would just poke it all day long, just push it, push it, push it, because dude, knock it off all day long, right? He was always looking for the pain to poke it. Guys, that's our job. Okay. One of the things that you have to know is that people move forward not because of the pursuit of pleasure. It's usually people move forward because they're trying to avoid pain, right? Pain gets people stirred to action more than pleasure, right? I remember talking to people and I'd say, "Hey, well, this particular product has a 220% bonus." Really? Yeah. Okay, and it could be this. Or I could be like, "Well, it also has a guarantee against loss." Oh, really? See, I like that. For whatever reason, the opportunity for big gains is less enticing than the ability to guarantee against loss. So for whatever reason, people are more likely to get into action because they want to avoid pain than the opportunity for growth or gain. So if you're not probing, guys, you're just providing information. You might as well be a pamphlet, okay? Because it gets to the emotion when you probe. And we know, again, people are buying with emotion. So, how does that make you feel? Is a very important question, right? A message that I heard this, a message that is not tied to an emotion is forgettable. That's big. Guys, I've been a Christian for since I was 21, okay? So it's safe to say I've sat through a lot of services. And there's probably about 4 or 5 actual sermons that I remember pieces from. Why? Because it made me feel some kind of way, right? Now, I study the Bible every day and I remember scripture, but I'm talking about a message that I heard, right? When a message on Sunday morning makes you feel something, when it ties to an emotion, that's when you remember it, right? There's a lot of times where like, man, that was a good word. Like, yeah, it's a good study. We're in Matthew chapter 5. It's really good. But I couldn't remember. I'll remember Matthew chapter 5, but I won't remember the actual message or the person who said it unless there's some type of emotion tied to it, right? And so that's the idea. I'll remember 100%. First time I ever went to a Christian church, okay? The pastor, he looked square at my face. I swear, there must have been 20,000 people in there, but he knew exactly where I was sitting. And he said, I'll never forget this. He said, "You could leave here today and die in the parking lot. And if you don't know Jesus Christ as your personal Lord and Savior, you will not go to heaven." And it sent fear down my body. And now I remember it 20 years later. I also called my dad and was like, "Bro, why'd you talk to this pastor about me?" He was like, "I've never said a word to that pastor in my life." I was like, "He was looking right at me." And my dad was like, "That was God talking to you, right?" But it's the emotion that you feel that puts you right back. So, guys, don't you want to be memorable when it comes to your clients? Or do you want them to just forget immediately? So, you have to tie some type of emotion, and you only get that by probing, right? Probing is getting in there, poking, finding the need and poking it, making it hurt. Okay. So, what are you doing in your sales presentations? What are you doing on your first phone calls, on your third presentations, on your application reviews that are poking at the pain? Because people are going to move forward because of the pain. So, number 3 is probing. So, number 1, I know Isabel was a little late. So, number 1 is opening type of questions. What we're doing covering is 4 types of questions to increase your closing abilities. Okay. First is you always want to ask opening type questions, not open ended questions, opening questions. Okay. Number 2 is clarifying questions. Number 3 is probing questions. And number 4 is qualifying questions. This one's really important. Okay. Now, lucky for you, the leadership here at Finline Financials put together a pretty darn good discovery form. The financial needs assessment form, if you just follow it, you'll get every bit of information that you need. Okay. But it's, hey, how much do you make now? What do you expect to make in retirement? And you match those two together to see if there's any shortfalls, right? How old are you? Health questions. I remember, I don't know if you guys are thinking about this, but I also sold a very different type of product. But I remember when I first got into this industry, do you guys want to know the questions that intimidated me the most were health related? Like, I was always like, oh my gosh, what if I don't know Trazepam medication is, or like all this crazy stuff. I was like, I don't know, what are all these medications? And now again, remember I told you I started selling final expense and I started selling with mortgage uh, protection. So final expense specifically, literally people would send me a picture of a of like a laundry list with medications that they take, right? And then it says like the name of the medications, it says the dosages, it says the usages, and I'd be like, "Oh my gosh," right? And I would have to remember like there's a list of like 9 medications, but if there's one on that list, that's like a knockout. If somebody's on this medication, they won't cover it, right? And so it used to get me really worried. But when you're doing a life product, which is infinite banking, IBC, which is IUL, which is mortgage protection, which is final expense, then underwriting on the medical side does matter. The last thing you want to do, guys, is go through all of this time with the client, spend 30, 40 minutes with them on the phone, and not ask the appropriate medical questions. And then you go to underwriting and they kick you out like that. You just wasted time, you wasted their time, and now you also, I don't know if you guys realize this, but it also makes you look bad. Because now you come back, you're like, oh, you got denied. That means I didn't know ahead of time the appropriate product to put you in. So now I have to shift and put you into something else. And from their perspective, that doesn't look good at all. Okay. So the good news is we're not asking you guys to know all of these medical underwriting deals from the beginning. All you have to do is be able to ask the right questions on the form, fill it out appropriately, and then get it to myself, get it to Maritza, or whoever the training agent is that you're working with, and we'll help you point them in the right direction, right? So that's the good news. So asking the appropriate qualifying questions and discover all of the different types of accounts that people have for retirement. If you're working with somebody who's really focused on retirement and tax-free growth, protection, dividends, all the good stuff, then you have to actually go through the process. Hey, do you have a CD or a money market account? Do you have any traditional stocks like traditional investments like stocks? How about ETFs? Okay. How about crypto? Believe it or not, I talk to people about crypto. You'd be surprised at how many of these folks more and more now are having crypto. How about precious metals? Any jewelry? Because when the crap hits the fan, if somebody needs to liquidate, that's what they're going to do. They're going to go and find things that they have that actually are worth value, right? So asking the appropriate questions, the 4 categories that we have will really help you guys to not only write business and close business, but to keep business. And that's what's most important. Guys, as an organization, if it was about putting in business rapid fire, we would put way more emphasis on recruiting. Because when you recruit a ton of people, everybody's got 1 or 2 policies they can put in like that, whether it's theirs or their grandma's or their mom's, or everybody's got 1 or 2. Okay. So we can grow real big as an agency and then just get a ton of policies coming in, and that's how we build. But I've found that when you do that, the chargeback rate or the fallout rate is really high. So we prefer to hire the appropriate people like you for the right reasons, train you guys responsibly, and then we'll start growing. The numbers that we're seeing, guys, are just off the charts, right? So very excited about where we're going, guys. So let's go over them one last time, and then we'll finish off the front side, and we'll talk about some numbers and get out of here. Number 1 is opening questions. 4 types of questions that categorically will help you to close. Number 1 is opening questions. Number 2 is clarifying. Number 3 is probing. And number 4 is qualifying. Okay.